Revelation 1592. From the 1st of September 1940. Matter. Serving. Abuse of free will. Everything on earth has its purpose, and nothing has emerged from God without meaning or purpose. Therefore the course of development of all spiritual substances must also progress unceasingly. The still will less spiritual is seized by God's will, which requires matter, and the spiritual in it is now forced into service. Thus the course of development is, as it were, inevitably assured. The spiritual must go its destined path, even if its will wants to oppose it. Thus God mercifully takes care of all beings which emerged from Him and ensures their higher development in order to be able to shorten the state of free will for them, for the being would fail in this state if its distance from God were even greater than it is now due to the long course before its embodiment as a human being. It would require far greater strength of will to defy all opposition, and the human being would hardly be able to muster this strength to resist, since his will of rejection towards God would still be too great. Thus the being must allow itself to be shaped according to God's will and to serve in a state of compulsion, whereas the human being, with a certain freedom of will, must decide to serve in order to develop his soul more highly. Only service brings final redemption, for through the human being's free will service is now a sign of love, and this must underlie every action. However, if matter is used by the human being, that is if he is forced to be of service, and if this act of service does not correspond to God's will, then the spiritual substance will be redeemed, but the shackle which the spiritual substance has escaped will wrap itself around the human being's soul who has caused such an act against God's will, and it will be inconceivably burdened and its own liberation will be called into question. And thus the human being can misuse his free will and give matter tasks which completely contradict divine will. And the beingness in matter has to correspond to and serve the human being although he demands wrong things from the being. The adversary uses this means to subjugate the human being as well as the spiritual substance. The human being has to answer for it, but the spiritual being in matter does not, since it is forced to do something which is wrong before God. For it cannot resist as long as it is still bound in form and also does not have the power of knowledge which is necessary to be held responsible for its actions. However, this is inherent in the human being, for he will certainly be able to distinguish between good and evil, and if his way of acting now visibly corresponds to evil he then abuses free will. He does not redeem himself during his earthly existence, but his state of soul remains a lowly one due to his own fault. Amen.